If you need any more evidence to understand the true gravity differences between Joe Biden and Trump's administration, this story is the best example. A judge nominated by Donald Trump has overruled a National Labor Relations Board decision made under the Biden administration. And this was a National Labor Relations Board decision, NLRB decision, that we were praising just 2 weeks ago or so. Okay? Judge J. Campbell Barker of the United States District Court in Eastern Texas vacated a rule issued by the NLRB determining when a company is a joint employer, making it liable under labor law for the working conditions of those hired by a franchise or provided by a staffing agency. So this is a complicated rule.
Yeah.
But let's go over what it means, because the main pushback against this ruling came from McDonald's, one of the largest franchisors in the United States. And McDonald's was arguing like, hey, we aren't in charge of the labor management of all of our separate McDonald's franchisees across the country. If there's a labor dispute in one of our McDonald's in the middle of Kansas City, don't come at the McDonald's executives. Go after the franchisor owner of that one specific McDonald's in Kansas City. Don't go after, the top level executives. And the NLRB was saying, hey, McDonald's, if you have food standards, drink standards, size standards, hour standards, all these different standards, why are you not enforcing labor standards as well as a portion of that?
Yes.
Right? And so you obviously have some type of operational control of these individual franchise stores.
Yeah, the franchise model is still, there's a contract with each franchisee basically that says, okay, you need to use this exact logo of McDonald's, right? These are your colors. This is the food quality that you need to have. And if you don't, then you don't get to operate as a McDonald's store anymore.
Yes.
You can just do the same thing with labor.
Yes. And so they were trying to argue, like, we don't have direct managerial control, and the NLRB used those different web connectors of all the different ways, the different cups that you're allowed to use, all those different ways that McDonald's executives force operating procedures on the individual McDonald's stores that say, no, you do have operational control and you should be completely liable for any type of labor disputes.
Yeah.
And the franchisors, McDonald's, argued it would totally disrupt their business model, right? Because now workers had a lot more leverage. Workers weren't just going after the local guy in their town who's making a good living owning a McDonald's. Now these workers are going to be going after the executives of McDonald's, which is now way more expensive for the McDonald's corporation to deal with. Because if one franchisee goes down for a labor dispute, they don't care.
Yeah. And I mean, it when you think about it, like McDonald's is going to have to spend a lot of more money on additional managerial services, I would think, right? Like I'm imagining them hiring not a consulting company, but an outside labor management company that's going to have to evaluate standards at all of its franchises all the time. That's not easy.
No.
It's not cheap. And it makes sense that they would complain about it.
Yeah, they don't want to expose themselves to the risk of all these different franchisees now. So McDonald's is going to have to crack down harder on each individual store and probably hire a lot more labor lawyers because like these labor lawyers are going to have to make check-ins, like you were saying, to these different places and make sure that the NLRB won't be knocking on their doors or any workers are being mistreated.
Yeah.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce was also another lobbying group that was pushing the NLRB hard to not pass this rule. It says the Chamber of Commerce said it will prevent businesses from facing new liabilities related to workplaces they don't control and workers they don't actually employ. That's very, very difficult to make the argument when we're talking about McDonald's. It becomes slightly more of a reasonable argument where at least you could have it when it's like a hospital maybe hiring a traveling nurse, right? Maybe, but you're still in the workplace as the traveling nurse in the hospital.
Okay.
But it's that joint employer contract basis where the Chamber of Commerce was trying to argue more on.
Yeah. I think it's a smart argument, right? Like you can draw a very clear line between we're not in the workplace, so we don't have to do with the workers.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to argue against it.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. But the point is, the NLRB appointed by Joe Biden will always, if it's an up in the air call, they're going to side on the side of the workers.
Yes, they're going to do everything they can to exert more control in favor of labor.
Yes, pretty much every time. If it's a jump ball, it's going to the labor side. So the NLRB chair, Lauren McPherson, said that this won't be the last time that they argue this. They're gonna appeal it. They tried to appeal it to a DC court, but that request got denied. So instead, it's going to be appealed in the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is the most conservative court of appeals in the country, which is why these guys brought the lawsuit in Eastern Texas. So if they wanted to appeal, they could only go to the Fifth Circuit.
Yep.
Which is a terrible way to form the system. But now, where am I going with this? Point is, this is a major difference between the Trump and Biden administration. And it's important that people who care about labor, workers' rights, and union rights really take this into consideration when they choose who to cast their vote for.
Yeah, if you're pro-business, this is probably going to make you more against Biden.
Yeah.
If you are pro-big business and you're pro-less regulation. But if you are pro-little guy McDonald's worker against big guy McDonald's, Biden is clearly the person on that side.
Yeah. Listen, if you are in a union, there is no good reason to vote for Trump over Joe Biden at this point.
At least economically.
At least economically. Right? There could be cultural stuff that we disagree on, that you disagree with Biden on. I understand that, and we can't convince you of that. And neither can Joe Biden. But the truth is, if your concerns are with labor, your paycheck, unions,
your quality of work life,
then Joe Biden is the president for you, because he is appointing people to the NLRB. He actually went around the rules a little bit and kicked off all the Trump-appointed members of the NLRB in a totally unprecedented move.
Really?
Yeah, he kicked all of the Trump appointees off the NLRB and put his own people on it.
Okay.
And so he just did a whole takeover of the National Labor Relations Board.
Wow.
No other president would be doing that. Obama wouldn't be doing that. That's a huge difference between the Biden and Obama administration, too.
Yeah.
This is a really good example of how far the Democrats have moved in the right direction in response to labor issues over the last decade. Obama was kind of toothless on it.
Yes.
He didn't care too much. And a lot of these court cases and a lot of the people arguing against a lot of the Joe Biden NLRB decisions are actually old Obama lawyers.
Really?
Yes, a lot of them are old Obama lawyers.
Wow.
Yeah, Obama did not surround himself with the best. That's for sure. That's for sure.
I mean, Obama's that's a whole
other thing.
We won't go into that.
It's just really good to see the NLRB being on the front lines again. I feel like I'm hearing more and more and more about their actions taken in favor of labor. And it's just been decades of nothing.
Yes.
And so like the UAW and the United Steelworkers, these unions are seeing this and they're like, holy crap, I actually see momentum and movement in favor of our interests.
Yeah.
And that's why they're coming out and endorsing Joe Biden. The U.S. Steelworkers recently just endorsed Joe Biden.
Yes, they did. It's a great example of, we talk about how the candidate matters, and that's usually in a campaign that we talk about it. But in this case, the specific politician matters. Like individual actions and decisions, they matter. They change the scope or the landscape of labor, right?
Oh, of course.
And Biden has completely lifted them to another level.
Yeah, and what's so depressing is the rule is vacated simply because Donald Trump was in office for 4 years. And while he was in office for 4 years, he had control of the Senate. And with all that power, he appointed judges across the country that are going to fight any type of movement of progress for labor in the country. And if more judges get appointed by Republican administrations, it's going to be harder and harder to change the system in a way that makes the country work better for working people.
I do wonder, so the general tension that we talk about is between giving more rights and more money to labor and to have businesses operate efficiently enough, effectively enough, that you're not losing jobs.
Right.
Do you think McDonald's, for example, if this rule is held in place, if they need to on their own enforce labor standards at all of their franchises, are they going to shut down a lot of franchises? Are people going to lose jobs? I guess that's something we couldn't know. We don't have the numbers in front of us. We can't really do the math. But
I guarantee you McDonald's was definitely putting up numbers saying that during the New Deal and when the National Recovery Administration, National Recovery Industrialization Administration, whatever, the NRA, when the NRA was passed, a lot of companies said simply like, we're not going to be able to afford to do this. You're going to shut us all down, right? And then they were going to FDR's administration saying that you're going to raise the cost of business too much and all of this is too much. And then it wasn't, and then they all survived. So I feel like in a lot of cases that's what happens.
Okay.
One of the things we do see in the country going on right now is rising prices in a lot of these fast food places, right? We see that kind of across the United States. And we also see that at a time when the wages for lower wage workers are increasing rapidly.
Yep.
There's a direct correlation there.
Yeah.
That's happening for a reason. So like for all the people who ever said like, no, I want a $15 minimum wage. I don't care if my Big Mac is more expensive. That's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like that's what would happen if these things were taken into effect. Eventually the cost is going to come back onto the consumer slightly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
fine with it.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
The question is whether the cost that is passed on to the consumer
Is worth the
lowers
benefit.
demand enough so that these businesses start to become less viable.
Yeah.
And then they have to contract somewhat.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like you just don't know.
You just don't know.
You just don't know.
I don't know. I haven't seen any evidence for it. I think I if I was the NLRB, I would definitely be thinking about that. And as someone who's involved in municipal government, you always have to weigh the benefits and the negatives.
Yeah, because
You
it's always
have to.
contextual.
It's always
never absolute.
It's always a cost-benefit analysis. Everything. Okay,
Yes.
so like to be principled and just be overly ideological is a bad way to go about politics and policy. But doing that cost-benefit analysis, I would need to be proven that it would hurt the bottom line before I say no.
Okay.
Right. I would need to see the evidence that it does the damage.
Yeah, it's also hard because it's going to, the money can come from it's like where is the money going? Is it going to pay the workers, and is it coming from the top of the company? Is it coming from the executives who are already paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year? Or does it come from shutting down more plants?
Right.
I think that's part of why it's hard to make the argument too. It's like we always think that more money can just come from what is being siphoned out to the top of the company.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've kind of started to come to the realization that that's not how it works.
Really true.
They just don't give up the money.
Right. They just don't give it up. They'll
And so
do anything else.
You have to take that into account. Like that's part of the assumptions now.
With the NRA passed under FDR, one of the things that he had in there that with a couple of these industries was opening up their books and giving all the books over to the federal government so that they had to prove that if they were going to make a policy change that negatively impacted workers, they had to prove that that was the only way they could do it.
Interesting.
They fought hard against that, and that was knocked down by the Supreme Court.
Damn.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, listen, I would do it. If I was president right now, I would do that absolutely.
Really?
100%.
Or you would try at least.
I would try at least. You know, if
Yeah.
the Supreme Court knocks it down, then, you know, I'll try to win more elections to appoint more people. But point is, it's just a really nice, it's nice to see the federal government finally put their weight behind labor again after so many years.
Totally.